Welcome to the Deep Wealth Podcast, where you learn how to extract your business and personal deep wealth. I'm your host, Jeffrey Feldberg. This podcast is brought to you by Deep Wealth and the 90-Day Deep Wealth Experience. When it comes to your business deep wealth, your exit or liquidity event is the most important financial decision of your life. But unfortunately, up to 90% of liquidity events fail. Think about all that time and your hard-earned money wasted. Of the quote-unquote successful liquidity events, most business owners leave 50% to over 100% of the deal value in the buyer's pocket and don't even know it. I should know. I said no to a 7-figure offer and yes to mastering the art and the science of a liquidity event. 2 years later, I said yes to a different buyer with a 9-figure deal. Are you thinking about an exit or liquidity event? Don't become a statistic and make the fatal mistake of believing the skills that built your business are the same ones to sell it. After all, how can you master something you've never done before? Let the 90-Day Deep Wealth Experience and the 9-step roadmap of preparation help you capture the best deal instead of any deal. At the end of this episode, take a moment and hear from business owners like you who went through the Deep Wealth Experience. Hannah Newman is a licensed functional medicine practitioner who specializes in hormones, gut health, and advanced biomarker protocols. She has advanced training certifications in nutrigenomics, hormones, toxin exposure, longevity medicine, positive psychology, sleep science, and gut health from the American Academy of Anti-Aging Medicine and the Institute of Functional Medicine. She's the founder of Healthy with Hannah, a boutique health and wellness company where she works privately with clients through customized health plans that incorporates advanced testing and lifestyle medicine. Hannah is also a member of YPO, an exclusive global community of chief executives, and is active on the Health and Wellness Board. Hey, all you listeners out there in Deep Wealth Land, I have a terrific episode for you, and pun intended, if your health is truly your deep wealth, here's a question for you. How are you feeling these days? Are you missing that spring in your step, feeling a little bit slow off the start? Or maybe you're already onto your health, but you want to optimize it. Maybe you want to do a little bit of a detox, or you have questions. How do I improve my sleep? Or how do I take it to the next level? We have a terrific episode lined up today, and our guest is going to walk us through everything that you wanted to know and then some, but I'm going to stop right there. Hannah, welcome to the Deep Wealth Podcast. An absolute pleasure to have you with us. And you know what, Hannah, there's always a story behind the story. So Hannah, what's your story? What got you to where you are today?
Yes, thank you so much for having me. I am pumped to be here. So what is my story? Great question. I'll keep it to what we're talking about today. So health and wellness medicine. I have been working in medicine for a long time, and I saw the U.S. healthcare system failing in the conventional sense. Okay. So through my medical training, you're going through the ER system, you're going through labor and delivery, through pediatrics, through all these different specialties. And it's exciting at times, but it's also disheartening at times. And you see the same patients coming time and time again, and people aren't getting better. And, you know, the US system has some of the highest spend in healthcare and some of the worst outcomes. So those things really led me to seek more training, more education. I knew there was a better way to do this. After my medical training, I did an advanced fellowship in integrative medicine. I went through that, and I also have training in functional medicine. I saw that there is a better way to treat people, and it doesn't involve throwing prescriptions as fast as I can at them and hoping it works. It really changed my perspective on it. And so I knew, you know, I wanted to do something in this field where I could work with clients one-on-one. And then my husband actually had a little health scare. He is a very healthy guy, stays on top of stuff, works out, but we had ran this test on him, and we found that his stem cell division was going too quickly. It was turning over really fast. And that could mean that there's an increased risk of cancer. Okay. So obviously that's the last thing you want to hear. Red flags everywhere. And he's a guy who, when something like that happens, he's calling everyone he knows, every specialist, saying, okay, I'm ready for my MRI. Let's check everything. And I'm over there and I'm like, Matt, you can't just walk in and get an MRI somewhere if you have nothing wrong. You
Uh-huh.
can't just show up at a specialist. It was a frustrating experience for him because he was ready to prevent things and make sure nothing was wrong. So that's where my company was born, out of that need for true prevention, total prevention, and just seeing the gap that was there.
Wow, what a terrific background of getting out there, seeing where the gaps are, wanting to make a difference. And you know what, Hannah, the timing is perfect because we need this more than ever. But let me ask you this. Let's circle back for just a moment. For some of our listeners, you use the word integrative medicine, functional medicine, and they may be saying, okay, well, obviously I know what medicine is, but what's integrative? What's functional? I've been hearing about this in the news and media lately. And for our listeners who perhaps are new to this, what does that mean exactly?
That is such a great question, and it can be very confusing. So, integrative medicine, functional medicine, they're really two of a kind, and it
Mm-hmm.
means that you're looking for root causes and
Mm-hmm.
you're looking at someone's health holistically. So, you don't see their stomach hurting and you say, oh, let's take some Tums. If this is a recurring issue, looking at their gut health as a whole. You're looking at their nutrition, you're
Mm-hmm.
looking at their sleep. So, integrative and functional, it's relating your whole body to itself and
Uh-huh.
using not just medications as treatment. In that vein, you're really able to prevent a lot of things when you look at healthcare like that.
And Hannah, I know we're going to talk a lot about this. And for our listeners out there, here's a somewhat rhetorical question for you. You know, you're business owners, you're type A, you're charging out there, you're conquering the world, you're slaying your dragons. And I bet for our listeners and their businesses, look, you see your accountants at least once a year. You're getting a checkup financially. You're doing other kinds of things, maybe a wealth advisor. You're getting at least a checkup quarterly, if not more than that. But when it comes to your health, let's face it, as business owners, just as people, if we don't have our health, then what do we have? We can't run the business. So for the business owners, for our listeners out there, how often are you really getting an extensive health checkup? I'm talking beyond the 7 minutes that you get with your doctor when you go for your annual physical. And
Yeah.
so, Hannah, given where you've been, where you're going, and what you're seeing, big picture wise, what's the biggest area? What's the lowest hanging fruit that's giving most people problems that they may not even know is giving them problems? What would be that one area that affects most people, most of your patients in your practice?
It's a toss up between two, but the
Okay.
most would be nutrition,
Uh-huh.
what you're eating.
Okay.
And it's not just people eating the standard American diet, which is, unfortunately lots of processed stuff, stuff
Mm-hmm.
from bags, stuff from boxes. Even people who eat a little better, they are still having digestion issues or skin issues or joint pain. And it's
Mm-hmm.
all because everyone is so different on a genetic level, on an
Mm-hmm.
epigenetic level, on a microbiome level. So what's good for you might be catastrophic for my gut health. So
Uh-huh.
really being able to personalize your nutrition based
Mm-hmm.
off of what you need is the lowest hanging fruit.
Fair enough. Good pun. I don't know if that was intended or not. And the topic of nutrition, it can be incredibly divisive because there's some people out there who may be, I'm just going to throw names out there. So a carnivore diet, a plant-based diet, a paleo, a keto, and the list just goes on and on. And not to be divisive for our listeners out there by any stretch, generally speaking, Hannah, when it comes to nutrition, and speaking of acronyms, and it's ironic, the standard American diet, SAD, it is sad. It's a sad state of what it does to us when we're following it. Some general best practices on the nutrition side that we can follow. What would you say to that?
The easiest place to start is to eat real food. And
Okay.
by that, things that come from the ground, things that come from trees, your
Mm-hmm.
fruits and your vegetables, and even things that come from animals. And that
Mm-hmm.
alone is a hot topic. But if you start with foods that are real, that don't have additives in a laundry list of ingredients, that is really the first step of healing and getting a good baseline. Of course, with all the other diets and trends, the ketos, everything you mentioned, those are super specific to each person
Mm-hmm.
and what their goals are going forward.
And you know what's amazing? I don't know about you, but when you follow these, and I'm reminded of my grandfather who always said, Jeffrey, moderation. It's always about moderation. Sometimes we can get so caught up. It's got to be exactly like this. Eat this, but don't eat that. And then, you know what? A few weeks later, a few months later, it changes. And okay, now what? But let's circle back to something that probably, regardless of what you're eating, what regime you're following, it all ties into this, and it's so overlooked. And I know this is one of your wheelhouses, and gut health. What's going on with gut health? Because I heard one study, and it was a well-known doctor. We'll keep some names out of it. But what was being said was every disease ultimately starts in the gut and then shows up somewhere else. What should we know?
Yes, this is such an important topic, and that's where I start with most people. And it is such a prominent issue today for a few reasons. One is because how humans are made up biologically. 70% of our immune system is housed right outside of our gut. And obviously, when things are digested through the gut, if you have a compromised cellular membrane there, it's getting into your system and it's becoming spread all through your blood. And then you have skin problems and joint problems. So it goes back to that nutrition component, unfortunately, that so many people are not eating the right foods for them, are not eating foods that really fuel them. And then on top of that, there's the stress component that we deal with. Many people work really hard and they're not giving themselves a chance to relax and recover from that stress. And that stress also has a big effect on your gut health. A lot of our neurotransmitters are housed in our gut, and many people can relate when they feel anxious. They even can have physical stomach problems. So it is related, but there are things you can do, which is where I always try to give the hope that these things can be mended, they can be reversed.
And that's so important because regardless of where someone is, if we can be, firstly, prevention, I think you would agree with me. Prevention is always so much better than after the fact where you get caught up with something. But would you say, would I be on base in saying that with the right attention to the proper areas, we can reverse a lot of things that are going on and get us back to really being in an optimal state?
Absolutely. With chronic diseases like diabetes, with heart disease, so many things that Americans struggle with today are reversible. So it's frustrating to be in this situation, but to work with someone who's experienced with reversing these things, it is so rewarding for the patients.
And so, Hannah, why don't you walk us through how does it work with you? So someone who's interested, maybe it's, I haven't been feeling the way I usually do, or hey, you know what, I'm in great shape, but I want to take it to the next level. I don't know what I don't know. Whatever it may be, someone reaches out to you. Can you walk us through your system of where you start, what that looks like, and what we can expect?
Sure. My system starts with people going on my website, and you can create a customized health package. So it's a laundry list of testing options or concerns that people are having, and you click the boxes. So maybe it's stress, gut health, worried about cancers, and you click all of them. And then I review them, and you can also write in any other concerns you have. And then based off of the history you gave me, what your concerns are, I submit you back a plan. I say, this is how I work. This is what's going on. And this is how I work. I'm working one-on-one with my clients. We're getting that baseline of testing done so we can really dive in. And these aren't your annual tests you're getting from your conventional doc. These are everything. I'm talking 20 vials at some points. We're testing your hormones, your stress, your inflammation, your oxidation level, anything that's precise to you that you're concerned about or we're looking to prevent. So we get this amazing comprehensive baseline of blood work, and then we build off of that. So my next thing is to look at your lifestyle, from your sleep to your exercise you're doing to your stress levels, and tweak everything to start optimizing those levels.
And for the listeners out there, we will have in the show notes a link. As I always like to say, it can't be any easier. It's a point and click. I've been to Hannah's website, and it's really like a do-it-yourself kind of health package. Okay, here are the areas. What do you want? You check it off. Boom, boom. It couldn't be any easier. Now, Hannah, you mentioned something interesting just now. You talked about sleep. And I know, speaking personally for myself, I've done a deep dive on sleep, and I've come out of that saying, okay, sleep is probably the most underrated, but most important and essential aspect. It beats any kind of food or supplement that we could possibly be taking, and makes everything so much better when we have the right kind of sleep. What are you seeing in your practice? Where are we getting it wrong when it comes to sleep? And I suspect as Type A personalities, as entrepreneurs, business owners, founders, we're in a league of our own. It's probably even worse for us than many others. So what's going on with the sleep front that you can illuminate us on and enlighten us with?
Two main things I see a lot of with the individuals you're talking about: high stress, they work a lot, they're used to these long hours.
Mm-hmm.
Their actual cortisol and melatonin rhythms and trends are off. And they might have been off for many years.
Okay.
So because of that, instead of having the wind down where your melatonin starts increasing and your cortisol, your stress starts decreasing when you go to sleep, it's all messed up. It's all out of whack. Even if you're in bed ready to go to sleep, your body's still going because you haven't recovered from that stress. So chronic stress is a big deal. And then the other thing that so many people skip over are what I call the basics, the essentials of healthy sleep routine. So the first being have a routine. Tell your body, train your body that these are the things I do before I go to sleep. That signals your brain, signals your melatonin cycles, and helps really get that correct trend going with your hormones. Having the dark room, the cold room, many people have heard this, but 65 to 67 degrees is recommended for optimal sleep. A sound machine if you need it, avoiding the lights, the Blu-ray, the technology. So skipping those steps and then the stress overload is what's really hurting people's sleep.
And so for our listeners, what Hannah's talking about, as simple as it sounds, and some people call it sleep hygiene, just like you have oral hygiene for your teeth, how about a sleep hygiene routine, ritual that signals to your body, okay, time to start winding down? And no, taking your tablet or your notebook to bed to catch up on some emails is definitely not winding down. So we're signaling to our body, Hannah, you're saying, okay, tell the body that it's time to wind down, start to relax, eliminate or reduce as much as you can that blue light in terms of what's going on there. Once we get that down, and what do you think, perhaps an hour and a half before bed, 2 hours before bed, we start doing that? Does that sound about right?
Yes. And everyone's a little different here, but if you can, 2 hours is recommended. And it actually goes the same for fluid intake, and food intake is supposed to even be 3 hours before bed.
Okay, so finishing your meal at least 3 hours before bed makes sense. Your body's not digesting when you're trying to sleep, gets you a better sleep. So let's say we've got the sleep hygiene down and we're limiting the blue light and all those other kinds of things that's coming in and following a nice ritual. What else can we do to really enhance the sleep? Because so many business owners that I speak to and Deep Wealth in our advisory practice, one of the things that we focus on is sleep, because we know, hey, if you're getting a good night's sleep, you're going to have a better day tomorrow, make better decisions. You can think more clearly. You'll have more energy. But so often we hear, yeah, you know what? Went to bed, fell asleep, but then 3 o'clock in the morning, woke up and I couldn't get back to bed. What's going on with that, Hannah? So many people that we speak to are experiencing this. Any insights on that?
That is cortisol cycle to a T, what you just described. That waking, even the time, 2 to 3 a.m. If you can fall asleep, okay, but then you're waking at that time, that is textbook stress issue. So for those people, I really encourage you to check your levels. And a lot of the time, it could be a melatonin deficiency. So supplementing a little bit there. Or if you have trouble sleeping in general, maybe it's the fall asleep aspect. My best little hack for that would be magnesium, a magnesium powder before bed with a little bit of lemon balm. That really helps relax those levels too.
And so there you're getting it straight from the functional and integrative medicine expert here for our listeners of some things that you can be looking at. And Hannah, when it comes to melatonin, and I know we're all over the map here, and some of the listeners are saying, Jeffrey, come on, you're talking about growing a business, you're talking about selling a business. What does health, what does sleep have to do with it? And the answer is everything. Imagine you're in a liquidity event. You've got to make some decisions, spot on decisions, but you don't have the best health, or you had a terrible sleep and you've got brain fog, or you can't think clearly. You're gambling with your future. So for our listeners, this is why we're covering these things. So Hannah, when it comes to melatonin supplements, I know it's all over the map in terms of what you hear out there in the journals and the media. What I've come to understand, and you can tell me if I'm on base or off base, is that the right dosage of melatonin doesn't make you become dependent on it. And like you're saying, it can actually be healthy. But what is that dosage? We hear so many things out there. What would you recommend if someone's saying, okay, you know what? Waking up at 3, I want to listen to Hannah, get the right kind of magnesium going. I'm going to get a little bit of a melatonin supplement going. What are we looking for in terms of dosage for that?
Yeah, that's an important question. And I would say in general, the stats behind melatonin working for you is about 1 in 3. But if you test your levels, you can check what your melatonin level is. And then dosage wise, it's in rules of 3 as well. So 3, 6, or 9. If you're not responding at 9 milligrams, you're probably not going to respond. They are doing some studies at higher doses, but still experimental. So if you're just taking an over-the-counter melatonin, you want to start at 3, give it a couple days. If it's not doing it, 6, same thing. If it's not doing it, 9. If it's still not working, you're probably not a good candidate for melatonin.
And of course, having someone like yourself as a health coach on the side there, just to help us go through that always makes a huge difference. So Hannah, we've dabbled somewhat in sleep. We spoke about gut health. We've been talking about your system. What would be some of the other areas that, I always say Pareto's Law, that 80%, maybe 90% of the symptoms that you're seeing are probably coming from, give or take, 20% of the same issues again and again. Is there anything else that's coming to mind of some common issues that most of us are going through?
Yes, I would say a lot of people are going through insulin or blood sugar issues. And
Okay.
of course, type 2 diabetes is very prevalent, heart disease is very prevalent. But something that is concerning that's more on the rise and more being talked about is type 3 diabetes, which, if you're familiar, diabetes of the brain, which is a
Right.
scary thought. And that's stemming or, thought to stem from all the sugars, all the insulin in our diets and what we're eating. And just think of it as adding plaques onto your brain. So looking at that and looking at your inflammation levels, looking at your brain performance, your memory hormones, I really emphasize that with people who have been through the gambit with the stress, the business life, to just stay on top of that.
And Hannah, again, correct me if I'm on base here or not, but for our listeners, I suspect in the very near future, Parkinson's, Alzheimer's, dementia, all horrible diseases are really type 3 diabetes. And that's where the science is heading. So what would be some typical mistakes of the kinds of foods that we think are healthy for us that probably aren't as healthy, that are spiking the blood glucose levels, the insulin, in not the best ways?
Things that come to my mind when you ask that are things with added sugars, which are in so many things. So yogurts, if you're eating cereals or oatmeals, even certain fruits. And I really try to not demonize fruits at all because they have phytonutrients and cancer fighting compounds. But if you are someone who does need to worry about them, then certain types of fruits like bananas are much higher in carbs and sugars. Grains, of course. There's the whole, smoothie bowl craze. They have whole shops now dedicated to acai bowls.
Yeah.
And those are just packed with sugars. So a lot of the things that are marketed as healthy and natural, I just encourage people to look at the labels and look at the sugar content.
Now, you mentioned oatmeal, and a lot of people are going to say, well, wait a minute, I thought oatmeal was healthy, and you sprinkle that with some fruits, like you're saying, and other kinds of things. What's the scoop on oatmeal?
Yeah, and it goes into what type you're buying. If it's the instant, it does usually metabolize more of a simple carb than a complex carb. And if there's added sugars in the packets you're eating. But if you're doing, for this one, gluten-free oats and adding a good healthy fat to it, your body will handle that better than if it was just the oats by itself.
Hannah, I'm wondering, when you're working with your patients, how are you giving them advice in terms of, depending on what you eat, also combining that with exercise, either before the meal or after the meal? What are you putting out there for your patients?
So I start everyone by tracking their foods. That sounds intimidating, but we do it for 2 weeks where we log everything. And that way I can review it and I can see what their normal life looks like and where we can make obvious changes. And this, of course, advice-wise will differ if there's someone who's worried about high cholesterol versus cancer versus diabetes. But once we know what they typically eat and then combined with what their labs are pointing to, that's when I can really say, okay, weight training would be beneficial for you. Okay, more cardio for you. So you really can be precise once you have the whole picture.
Yeah, it's fascinating. And again, Hannah, you can tell me if I'm on base or off base in saying that, as an example, oatmeal for one person may put their glucose levels through the roof and spike it, but for another person, maybe nothing happens. That all of us are different. And just because it happens to one person doesn't necessarily mean it's going to happen to us. But it sounds like there's some general principles and guidelines that you're putting out there for people.
Yes, that's really true. And that's why the CGMs are a valuable tool, because you eating a sweet potato and me eating a sweet potato would be a little bit different. But in general, of course, there are foods that are just high in sugars, high in carbs that certain people do need to watch.
And just like, again, to throw this out there, to put this into context, and Hannah, please school me if I'm off base with this. So as an example, I will have, and don't fall off your chair, Hannah, I'll have a banana or actually raw honey or some kind of fruit, but I'll do it immediately after a workout. And that's my lunch. And then right after the lunch, I'll do a 15 to 20-minute walk. And when I'm wearing the CGM, I can see what happens. I get the spike, but I want that spike because I've been working out and that tells me the body's responding normally. But then it doesn't go off the charts. When I'm doing that walking, I see it come right back down very quickly to normal levels. And so I just share that to put it into context. If I had the raw honey and that banana and the other fruit without working out, I suspect it'd be a very different story.
Yes, you are right on the money there. You can tell you've done your research here. So that is so true. After a workout, especially high intensity workout, a little bit of sugar, especially natural sugar, is good. And your body
Mm-hmm.
will handle that a lot better than if you eat a banana and go lay on the couch. It's different physiologically. So what you said is exactly what I do myself.
Mm-hmm.
After workout, a little bit of high sugar meal is okay. And then please go take a walk after each meal you have. It just helps regulate those insulin levels overall.
And Hannah, walking is so underrated, much like sleep. Can you talk to us about how powerful walking really is? And we're not talking jogging or running or an all-out sprint. It's just a nice leisurely walk after a meal. What's going on there? Why is that important that we do that regardless of wearing a continuous glucose monitor or not? Why should we
Mhm.
be walking after a meal?
Walking is so underrated.
Mm-hmm.
And I probably talk about walking every single day. And a lot of the issues with many chronic diseases today, or what puts you at risk for them, is to be overweight. And walking is one of the best ways to manage your weight in a relatively doable way. You don't have to go to the gym. You don't have to leave your house a lot of the time. You can walk around your house, walk up the steps. Just by doing that and regulating your sugars, and it also increases your blood flow, so your digestion is helped as well. Maybe you can walk outside and then you're getting some vitamin D and then you're getting that natural stress reduction. It's one of those multifactorial things that is benefiting you in tons of different ways.
And what's so interesting with that walking, and again, it sounds so simple, but this is just the way our bodies were designed. I was hearing about a study recently that was measuring how long people walked. And they found even if you can't do a 15 or 20-minute walk, doing a 2-minute walk, something as simple as that, and come on, we all have 2 minutes. We can find 2 minutes after a meal to walk, made a huge difference in terms of the glucose levels, because even in those few minutes, it sent a signal to the body, hey, movement's upcoming. You better start absorbing that glucose again. You're going to need the muscles, start getting ready. And it made a huge difference. Would love your thoughts on that.
Yes, no, I totally agree. The research is there. It is underutilized, and walking, and then I'll add in standing. That's
Mm-hmm.
one of the first steps I advise people to do when they're having trouble getting into activity. Stand up, take a phone call,
Mm-hmm.
stand up while you're working,
Mm-hmm.
and you're getting some of those same benefits.
There you have it. Walking, standing, go figure. Who would have thought that would have been so powerful? And so, Hannah, we're jumping around here, but I know there's some listeners who are saying, okay, guys, look, I hear you on all of that. But listen, in my family, there's been heart attacks and strokes, and you hear so much about that in the news, and it's just looking around affecting so many people. So, for listeners who are thinking about that, perhaps even worried about that, there goes the stress. We don't want that. What do you say to that? How can functional medicine, integrative medicine, help on the heart attack and stroke front?
Yes, I think functional integrated medicine really excels in terms of cholesterol and
Mm-hmm.
inflammation levels. So, where I always start with people is not just your standard LDL, HDL, triglycerides, and total cholesterol. I really look at the inflammation component because in order to have a heart event, a stroke, a heart attack, you need both fires going on. And the inflammation is very often overlooked in the conventional setting. So an example of an inflammation level is called a CRP level on blood work. And this is something that you should have checked every year, if not multiple times a year, because that will tell us if your body's kind of angry inside for whatever reasons, whether it's stress or diet or weight excess. But that in combination with the excess cholesterol is where you can really be in trouble for a cardiac event. And then in the functional side, there are all these new labs coming into play where you can dive deeper than the traditional cholesterol markers. So you can check your particle size, you can check if these are the bad particles or the good particles, and really precisely indicate if you should be on a prescription or if you could just lose weight or eat less cheese or something like that. And you can really tell what's going on there.
And so, Hannah, let me ask you this, because I'm sure some of the listeners are going down this path, and let's help them and let's address it. And no deference to doctors. Doctors are doing the very best they can. They all have terrific intentions. They've sacrificed a huge amount of their time, their life, their effort to do what they're doing. But at the same time, they're running into constraints in the system, the amount of time that they have, what they can do, what they were educated on. So compared to, let's say, a regular doctor or even a specialist, Hannah, how does functional medicine differ? And I know you used the word holistic a little bit earlier on at the start of the interview, but for our listeners who are saying, well, okay, but maybe I can speak to my doctor. Or, Hannah, you're talking about these particles, these fluffy particles. I'll speak to my doctor about that or about these other things there. Where are doctors really, the conventional doctors, where can they be enhanced or helped through functional medicine? How does that interplay work? What does that look like of perhaps what you're doing that we're just not going to get from our traditional doctor?
And I agree with you wholly on they have the best intentions, but when you're working through insurance in a conventional practice, you are just placed under so many restraints, whether that's time risk or incentivization to buy more medications or see more people in one day. So in order to treat someone holistically, you actually have to spend that time with them. You can't treat 5 systems in 5 minutes as in the standard model. So they really can't, and they haven't yet been able to work synergistically because one is a reverse of the other. You have to start by gaining that holistic approach and looking at all the systems, and then you just keep diving in. It really goes into the amount of time that I'm able to give with each client that I would have laughed at when I worked back when an insurance-based practice.
And so just to throw something out there for our listeners to put this in perspective for them. So as an example, just to pick something topical like a rash. So if I have a rash, if I go to a conventional doctor, I'm probably going to get some topical cream, some kind of medication. But what I'm hearing from you is, okay, functional medicine, integrative medicine is saying we're starting with a rash. That's the end result. But where does that come from? What's causing that? Let's step it backwards to find the root cause, treat the root cause, and then at the same time, we'll treat the rash, which is what we're seeing. Am I getting that correct?
Yeah, you're correct. And that conventional side succeeds at a lot. It is good at, if this rash happened once, here's a steroid cream and let's hope it goes away. But yes, if this is a recurring thing for you, you've been having these rashes, you don't know what's causing them or what's going to help them. You really do need to backtrack there and see, okay, is it the gut? Is it an environmental toxin? And that's where the functional, you can explore those things and you have this space to do that.
Got it. Okay. So from that holistic side, you're looking at the whole body, you're looking for the root causes. What we're seeing, what's manifesting is really coming likely from somewhere else in the body, perhaps even the gut, like we spoke about a little bit earlier, where most things are starting and what we can do to help with that. And then, Hannah, so we're in crisis mode right now. How long does it take you with most patients? And I know you could easily say, and I would agree with you, Jeffrey, it really depends. Every patient's different and there's no one cure-all for everyone. Generally speaking, though, back of the envelope, how long does it take for most people? And with most people, let's define that as business owners, founders, entrepreneurs. How long does it take to get us to equilibrium and then from there to get us to optimal health? What would you say?
If you're starting in a pretty decent place with your health, I would say 6 to 12 months.
Mm-hmm.
And that's to dive in and see where all your levels are at, your hormones are at. The stress component, it takes a bit to recover from.
Mm-hmm.
And the individuals like you're describing, they have the stress component. So in a good 6 to 12 months, we can really get people on the right foot where they
Mm-hmm.
have these tools now and they know the best types of activities, sleep, nutrition work for them.
So it's not a here today, gone tomorrow kind of situation. It sounds like it takes time and effort to do it, but the results definitely are worth a while. You're talking a lifetime of hopefully not living in pain, feeling good. I suspect a lot of people have forgotten that. And for someone who maybe isn't in optimal health or isn't even in good health, they're in a dark place, not a great place. And again, I know it can be so varied from one person to the next, but generally speaking, for people who just really aren't all that healthy, how long does it take to get them to a better place where they can actually start feeling it and seeing the difference?
I would say at least a year, sometimes a year and a half, even 2 years. And
Mm-hmm.
I like to tell people that, it took a while for your body to get to this point. It
Mm-hmm.
didn't happen overnight. So it's going to take a while to heal. And
Uh-huh.
healing for the rest of your life, you don't want it to come back next week.
Mm-hmm.
So to really get the tools and be prepared and be preventive with your health, that will take time and it will take, personalization and working with someone who's experienced here. But yeah, once you do that, you can absolutely be on a better foot going forward.
And Hannah, let me talk out of both sides of my mouth for just a moment. So, on the one side, what I'm going to say is the body on its own wants to naturally heal if it has the right elements. So take away the stress, give it the right kind of food, the right kind of sleep. As simple as that sounds, when you start doing some of those things, the body kicks in naturally with its healing process. Would you agree with that?
Yes, I would agree with that. Depends, exactly what we're talking, but yes, I agree.
And then on the flip side, I know there's listeners saying, okay, listen, that sounds like a lot of work. A year and a half to do. Why don't I just pop a pill? I'll see my doctor and doctor prescribes me something. Everyone else I know is on the same kind of pill. How bad could that be?
Yes, and that's a good point. And not all prescriptions are evil. That's definitely not, my viewpoint. But it is a trend I'm seeing, I'll be honest. People
Mm-hmm.
don't want to be on prescriptions and they're much less inclined to listen wholeheartedly without looking things up themselves. So
Mm-hmm.
people are more taking charge of their health and they don't want to age the traditional way that the US has been aging. So that to me is exciting and it's inspiring because that's the type of medicine I practice. But
Mm-hmm.
of course, there'll be people, and it is easier, and oftentimes it can even be cheaper and quicker to
Mm-hmm.
take the medication. So I encourage that if it's right for them, but always educate yourself on the side effects and not just the current side effects, but a lot of these things have long-term side effects that aren't discussed. And going back to our brain discussion, brain issues, memory issues, many of these can be linked to that over time, unfortunately. So do your research.
Absolutely. And when it comes to nutrition, I would throw out there for people to think about whether it's your grandparents or your great grandparents, maybe even your great great grandparents. If they didn't eat it or it didn't exist, you probably shouldn't be eating it either, and to follow their lead. And so, Hannah, before we begin to wrap things up here, and this has just been a wealth of information, knowing what you know and what you see on a day in, day out basis, and there's so many different directions that you could take this. But if a person can walk away with only one or two things that they could start today to do immediately that would have a beneficial impact on them, what would that be?
Great question. I would say walking. We've
Hmm.
discussed this.
Okay.
Walk and get your sleep in check. So those
Okay.
are free, actionable things that you can focus on. And with
Hmm.
those foundations, you can really start to put yourself on the right track for your health.
And for our listeners out there, walking you can do on your own. When it comes to your sleep, I would recommend reach out to Hannah and ask her, hey, Hannah, can you help me with my sleep hygiene? Can you help me with my sleep protocol or how I can get the most out of it? And we didn't go down the rabbit hole of deep sleep and REM sleep and light sleep and sleep efficiency and all those other kinds of things. That's really, you can do a whole series on that. But why not reach out to Hannah, get some help? I mean, chances are, all you business owners out there, you have accountants that you go to do the financial health checkup on your company. Maybe even have a fitness coach for your workouts for every now and again. Why not have a health coach, someone like Hannah? Hey, Hannah, help me get better sleep. Help me get deeper sleep. Help me just raise the bar on that. I really encourage you to think about that, and we'll have Hannah's information in the show notes. But Hannah, let's start to do this. Let's begin to wrap things up. And I have the privilege and honor to ask every guest on the Deep Wealth podcast this one question. So here it is. If you think of the movie Back to the Future, and in the movie, you have that magical DeLorean car that will take you to any point in time. So Hannah, here's the fun part. You look outside your windows tomorrow morning, and there it is. The DeLorean car is not only sitting there, but the door's open. It's waiting for you to hop on in, and you're now going to go to the younger version of yourself, maybe Hannah as a young child, a teenager, whatever point in time it would be. What would you tell yourself in terms of life lessons or life wisdom, or Hannah, do this, but don't do that? What would that sound like?
I'd be tempted to go to the future. No, I'm just kidding. So we're going to the past, and I would go back probably around when I was in grade school, and there was some things going on, parents' health at that point. But now knowing what I know so much of it was preventable. And to have a little bit of that knowledge and wave the magic wand to be able to tell them, we can change this, we can do these little things, and you guys will be okay. That's what I would do.
I love that. And we can just think about that for all of us. And I'm sure there's so many things that we would love to do, go back and do that. And Hannah, let me ask you this, and we're going to have all your links and all the information in the show notes. It'll be a point and click. If someone wants to reach out to you, they have questions, perhaps even want to start working with you, what's the best way or best place to reach you online?
Yeah, the best way is to shoot me an email. But in terms of social media, I encourage everyone to go to my website and create your own health package. It's fun to read up on everything and see what you can do and what you're interested in. So go create a health package or shoot me an email.
Terrific. And we'll have your email in the show notes for all the listeners out there. So go to the show notes and you'll get all that information, as well as Hannah's website, and you can pick your own package, design a bespoke package for you, and get all that going. Hannah, a heartfelt thank you for taking part of your day and spending it with us here on the Deep Wealth podcast. And as we always like to say, please continue to stay healthy and safe.
Thank you so much.
The Deep Wealth experience was definitely a game changer for me.
This course is one of the best investments you will ever make, because you will get an ROI of 100 times that. Anybody who doesn't go through it will lose millions.
If you don't have time for this program, you'll never have time for a successful liquidity.
I mean, it was the best value of any business course I've ever taken. The money was very well spent.
Compared to when we first began, today I feel better prepared, but in some respects, maybe less prepared, not because of the course, but because the course brought to light so many things that I thought we were on top of that we need to fix.
I 100% believe there's never a great time for a business owner to allocate extra hours into his or her week or day. So it's an investment that will yield results today. I thought I will reap the benefit of this program in 3 to 5 years down the road. But as soon as I stepped forward into the program, my mind changed immediately.
There was so much value in the experience that the time I invested paid back so much for the energy that was expended.
The Deep Wealth experience compared to other programs is the top. What we learned is very practical. Sometimes you learn stuff that is great to learn, but you never use it. The stuff we learned from Deep Wealth experience, I believe is going to benefit us both.
I've done an executive MBA. I've worked for billion-dollar companies before. I've worked for smaller companies before I started my business. I've been running my business successfully now for getting close to a decade. We're on a growth trajectory. Reflecting back on the Deep Wealth, I knew less than 10% what I know now. Maybe close to 1% even.
Hands down the best program in which I've ever participated. And we've done a lot of different things over the years. We've been in other mastermind groups, gone to many seminars, workshops, conferences, retreats, read books. This was so different. I haven't had an experience that's anything close to this in all the years that we've been at this. It's 5-star, A+.
I would highly recommend it to any super busy business owner out there. And Deep Wealth is an accurate name for it. This program leads to deeper wealth and happier wealth, not just deeper wealth. I don't think there's a dollar value that could be associated with such an experience and knowledge that could be applied today and forever.
Are you leaving millions on the table? Please visit www.deepwealth.com deepwealth.com/success to learn more. If you're not on my email list, you'll want to be. Sign up at www.deepwealth.com/podcast. And if you enjoyed this episode, if it added value, if you walked away with some new insights and strategies, please leave a review on your favorite podcast channel. Reviews help us reach new listeners, grow the show, and continue to create content that you'll enjoy. And as we wrap up this episode, as always, please stay healthy and safe.